McIntyre here. Yes, I changed my hair again. Preparing for the summer. Yay! Here to give you a play-by-play summary of the Lori Vallow trial. I am going to walk you from beginning to the end of this morning. As you guys know, we are on jury watch. We are on jury watch because right now the jury is already deliberating. The court proceedings open at 8 a.m. There was an initial reminder for everybody. The charges that Lori Vallow was facing. Number one, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and grand theft by deception of Tylee Ryan. First-degree murder of Tylee Ryan. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder and grand theft by deception of J.J. Vallow. And by the way, this grand theft by deception is related to collecting their Social Security checks while they were already deceased. Then the first-degree murder of J.J. Vallow, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell, and grand theft. Notice that for Tammy Daybell, she is not facing first degree murder charges, but she is facing conspiracy to commit those. Larry Woodcock walked into the courtroom with Kay, and he was playing "We Will Rock You" on his iPad, and he said that's JJ's song. Follow with Lori walking into the courtroom. I'm not going to tell you what she was wearing because that's crazy. Let me just go to the bailiff. The bailiff said, today's a very big day. Thousands of man hours have been put into this case, and we want to give the jury as much respect as we can. Please silence your phones, which reminds me, let me silence mine, because yesterday in my live scream, I got a call and I had to interrupt it. He said, please silence your phones. If you don't know how to silence them, turn them off. No photos or videos in the courtroom. The lifesavers are a double-edged sword. Please open the wrappers now. Apparently, that is something that he's been doing on a daily basis. He is, I'm told, a character. Well, Joyce Boyce is on the bench, and he is going to provide jury instructions before closing arguments. Here is what he starts with. The court must deny a motion if there is some evidence of guilt presented at trial. He cites the case about Idaho Rule 29 because the defense yesterday had presented the motion for the charges to be dismissed for lack of evidence. But the judge says, obviously, this has been a long trial with a lot of witnesses and a lot of evidence presented. So the evidence, he says, substantiates the elements of the charges, and therefore he is not going to dismiss the charges because of the witness testimony and all the evidence presented. No surprises there. Boyce continues to list the charges that I already listed. Let me see here. During this period of time, Lori continues to write in a notebook, looking at the jury and looking at the judge. Boyce begins with jury instructions. Here are some of the things that he says. If there is a reasonable doubt, you must find the defendant not guilty. He reads from rule number 5 that the defendant has a right not to testify. You have not heard all the evidence in this case. My duty is to instruct you as to the law. You must follow all the rules as I explain them to you. You may not follow some and ignore others. Even if you do not understand or disagree, you must follow them. He also says something that's very, very powerful and that we should all know. The lawyers are not witnesses, and what they say is not evidence. If what they say differs from the facts that have been proven throughout the course of this trial, you must give more importance to the facts. Well, he continues explaining the instructions, and I am just going to skip some, and I'm going to go into the most important ones. Jury instruction 31, Boyce explains that in order for Lori to be found guilty of first-degree murder, the state must prove each allegation listed in the indictment. Once the jury begins deliberating, the judge says they will have access to all written testimony, all the evidence, including 130,000 to 150,000 items found on iCloud account, and we've been summarizing those in the playlist here. Every day we've covered this trial. There are 18 jurors here. 12 will be picked as the actual jurors, and the other 6 as alternates. Boyce continues to read the instructions, and here's very, very important. He says, Boyce says, in this case, you will return a verdict consisting of a series of questions. Here are the 6 questions, and they are directly tied to the charges that I read at the beginning of this video. Is Lori not guilty or guilty of the conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan? Question number 2. Is Lori not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan? So the first one is conspiracy, the second is the actual murder. Is Lori not guilty or guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of J.J. Vallow? Number 4, is Lori not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of J.J. Vallow? Number 5, is Lori not guilty or guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell? And 6, is Lori not guilty or guilty of grand theft? Boyce explains that the exhibits will be available, and then they take a break, and then after the break, they show the pictures. The pictures of the first picture to appear is Tylee, and that signals that the Madison County Prosecuting Attorney Rob Wood will present closing arguments. Here's an excerpt. Money, power, and sex. Beginning in October of 2018, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell set in a motion of events. Along the way, they included her brother Alex Cox to participate in a conspiracy unencumbered and free of obstacles. This plan was driven by Lori Vallow's desire for and use of money, power, and sex. And this plan must end today in the verdicts due render in this trial. Again, the picture of Tylee Ryan is shown on the screen. And he says, she was burned and buried in Chad Daybell's backyard. What was left of her body, they dumped in a green bucket and buried in a pet cemetery on top of a piece of her skull. Tylee was gone and buried and out of the way, but Lori Vallow kept collecting Tylee's money. And as you can see there, he's talking about not only the conspiracy to commit murder, the murder, but also theft. Wood continues. Lori never reported that Tylee was missing. She lied to multiple people. She had to keep her body hidden so she could keep getting the money. Now, the picture of JJ shows up on the screen. JJ's voice, he continues saying, was silenced forever by a strip of duct tape placed across his mouth. A white plastic bag was placed over his head. This is so hard to read. Where it was secured tightly with duct tape wrapped around and around from his forehead to his neck. The evidence says that he struggled, and we'll never know how long he fought before they wrapped tape around his wrists and ankles. Then he stopped breathing, his heart stopped beating, and he died. It was a brutal, horrific murder for a 7-year-old boy with special needs. Just like Tylee, Wood continues saying, Lori never reported that JJ was missing or dead. She kept collecting the money. She lied to multiple people and even asked a friend to lie to the police about JJ's location. Just like Tylee, after JJ was murdered, she kept collecting the money. There you have it. Conspiracy to commit murder, murder in the first degree, and theft. Now, the picture of Tammy Daybell is on the screen. And Wood says, a loving mother of 5 and school librarian was murdered in her own home. She was asphyxiated in her own home. The evidence is clear that Lori, Chad, and Alex conspired, to murder Tammy. Acting together, they caused her death. Her death occurred just a little over a week after a masked gunman attempted to shoot her as she entered her home after a night of church activity. Lori was conveniently gone for both the attempted murder and the successful murder. Those trips were not coincidences. And just like Tylee and JJ, there was money to be gained from Tammy's death. $430,000 worth of life insurance. And Lori wasted no time to benefit from that money. Now on the screen, the wedding pictures of Chad and Lori on the beach. They were freed from the obstacles of their kids and wife. They were dancing on the beach. You have seen plenty of evidence of the affair that took place after they met, while they were still married. Wood is now walking to the jury through the timeline that tells the truth as it is displayed on the screen. He continues, Lori Vallow is the one who ties this all together. He talks about the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux, Rexburg police getting a call looking for JJ, the investigation into the missing kids, Tammy's body being exhumed, the kids being found. Wood continues talking about Idaho law and this being a crime of agreement. Did Lori agree to have Tylee killed and steal that money? Did she intend for those events to actually happen? And did any of the conspirators perform an overt act in furtherance of that agreement? And I think we have seen through the evidence that the answer to all those questions is yes. Wood continues, when it comes to conspiracy, you need to ask yourself, who murdered these people? Did Lori intend for it to happen? And was one of these overt acts accomplished in the furtherance of the conspiracy? You only need to find one overt act. The state has met its burden for each overt act. You only need to find one. And of course, the state has met their burden of proof because there's ample evidence that these people were murdered. Wood now is talking about the Tylee murder charges. And he asks again, did Lori aid and abet in that murder? Did she encourage the murder? Remember when she was talking to Shad and asking, what's her percentage? What's her percentage? 3? Is it non-zero? She wanted her to reach that percentage of death. He continues saying, he says, Lori was involved in the grand theft of the money that she should have not been receiving because Tylee was dead. She also took Tylee's money by means of her bank account. He also tells the jurors to read the instructions carefully and they will find that the state has met its burden beyond a reasonable doubt. And then he goes to explain a reasonable doubt. Pay attention because this is very, very important. A reasonable doubt is based on reason and common sense. Use your reason and your common sense as you deliberate. Malice is one of those words that may mean something in the real world versus in court. Follow the jury instructions. Malice can be expressed where someone says they want it to happen, or it can be implied. Because Lori was not present in any of the murders, it doesn't mean that she is not responsible if they are able to prove that she wanted it to happen, or if it can be implied. And this has been established by both the witnesses and the evidence. He continues saying, you will find express and implied malice in this case. There is an abundance of malice, and I think we all agree. Wood continues, aiding and abetting is just the same as pulling the trigger. Overt acts. On a conspiracy, you must find at least one overt act beyond a reasonable doubt. Overt acts in and of themselves don't need to be illegal, but if it is an act done in furtherance of conspiracy, then it is an overt act and makes it part of the crime. To be clear, he continues saying, nobody here has been charged for their religious belief. They have been charged for using those religious beliefs to justify murder. I could have not said that any clearer. Many jurors at this point are taking notes. Others are looking at Wood as he gives his argument. Wood continues, they couldn't kill the kids in Arizona where they had friends and family. Moving to Rexburg was the catalyst for these murders. They had to hide Tylee and JJ. They had to go somewhere nobody knew them at. Moving to Rexburg was the catalyst for these murders, and then Alex followed. Wood then starts listing off overt acts he says Lori used to further the conspiracy and the grand theft. For example, she never reported her kids missing. She changed bank accounts to get Social Security benefits from her kids. She got burner phones. And Wood adds, all these steps were taken to further their conspiracy. Wood mentions the text messages about Tammy being in limbo and being possessed by a zombie. Wood also explains how Alex visited gun rangers, went to Spurman's warehouse, and then was located at the church near Shad's house on the night Tammy died. These are all overt acts and steps taken to get to murder. At this point, Lori is looking at Wood. Wood reviews the digital evidence, including all the searches on the Homer J. Maximus account, which is Alex Cox's account. On the screen is a list of searches. Alex did about preparing an AR in the cold, shooting through a Dodge Dakota, which is the same vehicle Tammy and Chad own, and how to drill baffles to make a suppressor. Talk about overt acts. Woods also talks about Chad Daybell searching for wins on September 8th, which was the day they burned. It is believed that they burned Tylee's body. He says the next day he knows he will be burning Tylee Ryan in his fire pit, and he needs to know which way the wind will be blowing. This is the only time he searches wind direction. Wood shows the searches on the Lollytime Forever account and Lori Vallow Google searches. And he says the day Tammy Daybell is being buried, Lori is looking up wedding dresses in Hawaii. Her boyfriend's wife is being buried that day, and she is already looking for wedding dresses. Wood then reads the raccoon text from Chad Daybell to Tammy Daybell on September 9. This text is where Chad Daybell told us where to find Tylee Ryan. You guys remember that text, right? I caught a raccoon and I had to bury him and I had to burn branches, and it was a very atypical kind of a text for Chad Daybell. And that is how they knew where to find Tylee. Tylee Ryan, he continues, was seen in Yellowstone National Park and then was never seen again. But she turned up in Chad Daybell's pet cemetery. Wood references the James and Elena story too. This was all a plan for them to be together without obstacles. Obstacles was the word they used, and it's true. They used that word to refer to their family members over and over again. Wood continues saying, this all revolves around money and reminds the jury of Colby Ryan's testimony. Every 2 to 3 months, Lori would tell him, we are out of money. It was a concern for herself. Wood shows the Google location history of Alex Cox and a map that lays out his cell phone activity the early morning of September 9, 2019, the day that it is believed one of the kids was murdered. He continues saying, we see the map of Alex's movements from the morning of September 9 and the GPS hits of his phone. There is a hit at the burn pit of Chad's property. Another hit right by where Tylee was buried, and another hit at the gate of the property. Any reasonable person has to conclude that this is where Tylee was either murdered or her remains destroyed. We now see a slide after Tylee was buried. Wood says they've done the deed, they burned Tylee, they dismembered her, and buried her. Wood now reminds the jury of Melanie Gibbs and David Warwick's testimony. Lori told them that JJ was a zombie and was acting out. On the morning of September the 23rd, David asked about JJ, and Lori tells him he was climbing up the cabinets and refrigerator, so she sent him with Alex Cox. An overt act. Alex Cox took possession of JJ that morning. Wood now shows where Alex was that morning, in his apartment, and then on his way to Chad Daybell's house with JJ Vallow in tow. He continues saying no matter how many tips police followed up on, they never found JJ. They never found Tylee except here, where Alex's phone was pinged by GPS. Wood says, pointing to Chad's backyard, that is where the kids were found. Alex spent 17 minutes at Chad's house the day that JJ was buried. That grave, he says, was not dug in 17 minutes. It was premeditated and planned, eureka, because the defense attorney, when talking about this, had asked the witness, well, isn't 17 minutes too hard to do all that was done with the remains of JJ? Absolutely. And what did we say? We say, well, it is hard unless everything has been prepared and lined up. And based on the professional way it was prepared and the fact that Chad Daybell was a grave digger by profession, we know he was directly involved, and all Alex had to do was to drop the remains. Wood also talks about Chad getting his burner phone on October 9, the day Tammy was shot at. Alex is at his sister's house and then goes to Sportman's warehouse. He says you can follow his phone as he scopes out the property. Wood shows a timeline of digital data from that day. 15 text messages between Alex and Chad in a short amount of time. What is the tie between Alex to Chad? Everybody say it. Lori Vallow. Wood is now talking about the night Tammy died. He says the night Tammy was murdered. He shows a timeline showing the digital activity from that night between Alex Cox and Chad and Tammy. An image is deleted from Tammy's phone that night. Alex calls Lori at 11:53 p.m. Lori is in Hawaii on purpose. Not a coincidence, Wood says, trying to create an alibi. But it doesn't matter because she's not being charged of first-degree murder for Tammy. She is just being charged with conspiracy to commit murder, and of that, there's plenty of evidence. Wood now is showing an overhead image of Chad Daybell's property on the screen. Wood explains that a warrant was served on the property on June 9, 2020. He says multiple officers testified to you of watching Chad Daybell in that car, looking over his shoulder to the location of where Tyler Ryan was buried. You heard a phone call from that morning from Chad telling Lori they're searching the property. You can hear the fear and guilt in both of their voices. They know what is about to happen. Oh, guys, in that call, she asked him, "Do you want me to pray?" To what God are they praying? Wood then shows the fire pit where Tyler was found. He shows an image of a chain and a jewelry charm found in the debris being worn by Tyler Ryan. You satellite footage that same day of the disturbance on the ground. You saw it, not you sat. You saw satellite footage the same day on the ground. You saw how law enforcement found a dog and a cat in the ground. They found what they thought might be human bones and they continued to dig. And this is what they found. This is what was left of Tyler Ryan. Charred flesh, dismembered. And he says this as an image of Tyler remains is put on the screen. Wood shows a chunk of concrete found in the ground, sitting on top of Tylee's skull. He says that they also found pieces of Tylee here in the shed. A photo of the shed is shown on the screen at this moment. We see a pig's axe that was taken to the Idaho State Lab, and there they found Tylee's DNA in the eye of the pig's axe. We see a photo of the shovel that was tested for DNA, where they found blood in the handle, and it matched Tyler Ryan's blood. Wood now shows a photo of the grassy area where JJ's body was buried. We now see a photo of the rocks and boards that were lying on top of JJ. You heard the testimony of multiple officers about the smell emanating and how they found what was a human head. Look at this grave, he says. This was prepared in advance. This was premeditated murder. You heard testimony that Lori Vallow handed JJ off to Alex Cox. We also have testimony that indicates that Lori was asking Chad when something was going to happen to her kids and to JJ. JJ needed to be zero in a hurry. Wood says, Tylee, JJ, and Tammy can't tell us what happened, but their bodies do. Wood now shows the images of Tylee bones on the screen. He points to images and marks that show signs of stabbing. We now see a graphic photo of JJ Vallow's body wrapped in tape. They did this to a boy with special needs. We now see Tammy's autopsy photo. There was nothing in her body that would have killed her. She had bruises on her arms that the medical examiner stated were consistent with someone restraining her. JJ had bruises on his arms too. Would continue. We talk about money, power, sex. Lori learned a lesson with Charles Vallow. She learned how to get money before the deaths. Within a week, she's already talking about the Social Security she's going to get. It was already planned. We see a history timeline of when Tammy received Social Security money and when Lori switched accounts. She had it under control. Wood says, get the money and then commit the murder. Because as you know, with Alex Vallow, it didn't happen. He had already changed the beneficiary. He says she made sure to make arrangements to get the money before JJ's death as well. Wood explains the amount you need to fine for grand theft is 1,000. If you find Lori Vallow collected 1,000 that was not intended for her, you must find her guilty of grand theft, and we know that she did for both JJ and Ty Lee. Then there is a slide that says money, the benefits of murder. The next slide says power. And Wood says, it does not matter what they believed, it matters what they did. They can believe whatever they want, but when they use that to justify homicide, that changes. They use religion as a tool to manipulate others. Lori manipulated Alex Cox through religion. She manipulated Chad through emotional and sexual control. They together manipulated their friends. Wood displays text messages showing the grooming of Alex Cox. Lori Vallow is telling Alex Cox what to do. You never see Alex tell her what to do. She is always telling him what to do. Wood references one message where Alex says, "My lips are sealed," and Lori responds, "Good boy." Alex's wife, Solima Pastenes, testified that Alex believed all of it. Wood says, the only reason religion matters is because it is the tool they use to manipulate others. Who is the common thread here? Wood says, Lori Vallow. We continue, seeing now a slide that says sex affair. Text messages are displayed on the screen about kissing for hours, being cheek to cheek, loins to loins. Lori uses sex to manipulate Chad, and Chad seeks confirmation from Lori repeatedly. The next slide says sex, obstacles to a future together. Wood then points out that when Chad spoke about Tally and JJ being close to death, their death numbers, Lori responded with, "That is sweet. I missed you desperately." We've discussed those at large, but you can find it in the playlist. There is no doubt, he says, that she wants these children gone. She's encouraging their murder. She wants her own children gone. This isn't fantasy, Wood says. Those children were found dead in real life in Chad Daybell's backyard. We now see a slide of text messages from Lori to Chad. After Charles was shot in the chest, Chad texts Lori, "Tammy is close. JJ is at a 2. This was on July 30, 2019. On July 30, she's already planning for JJ to go the same way as Charles, to be murdered. The conversation goes into sexual text messages right after Chad and Lori were texting about the deaths of their spouses and the kids. Lori asks Chad if JJ is at 0 yet. She can't wait for JJ to die, Wood says. Wood references Lori's text to Chad in August 2019. She says, "I feel lost, like I should be doing something to help," referring to the deaths of the kids. Wood says, I'm worried about the Wood says, not I'm worried about the kids. That's not what Lori is saying, but I should do something to help get them closer to their deaths. Lori uses sex to get Chad to do what she wants him to do, Wood says. Wood adds, Lori never says, maybe we shouldn't kill our relatives. There's never hesitation. He references the Wi-Fi password Alex set up. Remember, too many kids. To which Lori responds, funny. It would be funny, Wood says, if her kids were still alive and maybe a little rambunctious, but her kids are dead. Wood references the message Chad sent that said their spouses were obstacles. Chad sent a message to Lori on October 5 asking for Lori to seek a confirmation. Wood now shows a slide documenting that Lori was in Missouri at the time of the attempted shooting. He shows a text from Lori to Melanie B., telling her she can go out of town, and Melanie responds, okay, Captain. Wood says, Lori was in charge. She was in commands. Wood says, ladies and gentlemen, you have your instructions. You are going to go back and deliberate. Read them carefully. Consider all the evidence. Look at all the facts. Look at the timeline. Charles Vallow, Tylee Rajan, JJ, Tammy, all within a short time frame. How are they tied together? Who could have killed those people? We have Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Alex Cox. Who had motive to kill those people? Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. Who benefits from these murders? Lori Vallow gets Tylee's money. She gets JJ money. Shad and Lori get Tammy's money. What does your reason and common sense tell you? You've seen what happened to her children. You've seen what happened to Tammy. She never reported the children missing. She lied and she lied and she lied about where they were. And while she lied, she kept collecting the money. And to that, we must add, and we all kept worrying about the kids. What does justice for these victims require? It requires a conviction on every count. And he says this as photos of JJ and Tylee and Tammy are on the screen. And Wood wraps up saying, you must convict her. And the court then takes a recess, waiting for Archibald's closing arguments. And after the break, here is Archibald's closing arguments. This is the defense closing arguments. He says to the jury, thank you for your service. You have a tough job. We talked about this almost 7 weeks ago when we met. We talked about the case being difficult. You were asked if you could be fair and impartial and reserve judgment until the end. We're getting close to the end. You were asked to be patient and attentive while putting your life on hold. Again, thank you. Archibald thanks the prosecutors and says, we're small town lawyers. We're not from Boise. We're called opposing counsel, but we do respect each other. We respect the jobs we have to do. Archibald says he does not have a PowerPoint. Okay. You don't need that to defend your client. He continues. Who is Lori Vallow? What happened? Where did it happen? When did it happen? Why did it happen? That's what you've been asked to figure out. That's what you need to be convinced of beyond a reasonable doubt. Lori was born in California, turns 50 next month, got married right out of high school, got divorced, went to beauty school, got married, and divorced again. She worked hard as a single mother. Archibald explained about Lori marrying and divorcing Joseph Ryan. The kids needed protection from Joseph Ryan. Then he talks about Charles Vallow and their marriage. You heard JJ had medical issues when he was born, and Charles and Lori were a good fit for him. They loved him and they cared for him. Then the story about Lori Vallow changes dramatically in October of 2018. Yes, it did. Archibald says, who is Shad Daybell? Lori read some of his books, and Archibald explains all about the religious teachings, the 144,000, the evil spirits, the light and dark ratings, the zombies, Jesus being in the temple. Quite a remarkable change in Lori from people who knew her. Archibald says, what the heck is going on? How can this be? He says, 1 year after meeting Shad, 4 people are dead. Then Archibald reminds jurors they shouldn't consider Charles' death in this case, as Lori is not facing charges here in Idaho for the death. That's true. We are just using that to establish opportunity and ability to commit these crimes. Archibald says, I talked to you weeks ago about paying attention to who does what. Pay attention to burden of proof. We don't have to provide any witnesses or evidence, and my client doesn't have to testify. You cannot hold that against us. He continues, pretty soon, 6 of you are going to have to get bumped, and that's too bad. The judge is going to pick numbers out of a hat to see who stays and who goes. I think the thought was during a long trial, someone was going to get sick or have issues at home or a death in the family. Notice here how he's just trying to make his closing arguments longer, because this is not part of his closing arguments. Something is going to happen. All of you showed up. To you, alternate. Thanks again. Yep. When you have nothing else to hold on to, you have to think and think and think. Thanks again for your service, and I'm sorry you won't get to deliberate with your fellow jurors. Come on. He continues. Hold on. My phone is low on batteries, and I don't want our thing to be interrupted. He continues. You've been able to see my client. You've been able to see the evil glares she gets from the audience. You've been able to see the witnesses and the evidence. You've been able to hear my client 6 times during this trial in her recordings. He then lists the pieces of evidence, the phone calls, body camera, footage, and the podcast. He says that Archibald says that he respects the state's argument that this is about money, sex, and power. But he says Charles Vallow was making $400,000 to $500,000. Lori was receiving far less in Social Security money after Charles' death. So what is the point of the death? Then she moves on to Shad, who can't sell enough stupid books about the end of the world. So Tammy has to support him. So Lori wanted to ditch Charles, who makes 400 to 500,000 a year, to go to Shad, who makes 30,000 a year, and she wanted to do that for money. That is because Lori wanted power, and Shad was telling her what she wanted to hear. They had been married in prior lives, remember? Archibald's continue. In the year Shad convinced her that she was a goddess, how many converts did Lori have? Zero. A big fat zero. How many converts did Shad have? I count 6. Melanie, Audrey, etc. Well, she did have Melanie Boudreau, her niece, and Alex Cox. This great cause of saving the world and gathering up the 144,000, Shad got 6 and Lori got 0. No, Lori got 2. Doing some simple math, Shad has 143,994 people left to gather before Jesus comes. At the rate of 6 people a year, this will take Shad 24,000 years to get this army assembled. This math is ridiculous. I have to admit that this was brilliant. And this is why we're going to see at the end, there are reports that Lori was furious. Furious. Apparently, she didn't approve this closing. He goes, people have sex outside of marriage every day. Yes, they do, but they don't murder their spouses. He compared the physical attractiveness between Shad and Charles. Archibald says it wasn't about sex. He says she's reading his books during a hard time in her life, and this guy is telling her she's a goddess. My point exactly. And by the way, we've already been married in previous lives, so it's not really cheating. And we were best friends with Jesus, and Jesus approved, so everything is okay. That's quite the pickup line by Shad to Lori, and it worked. Pretty scary that the pickup line from Shad to Lori worked. Yes, pretty scary. And pretty scary that he had more power than her common sense, and it's pretty hard to believe that he had more power than her love for her kids. Archibald says there's no doubt the children are dead, but did Lori do it? You have heard 60 witnesses and seen hundreds of exhibits. County police, local police, state police, federal police, a lot of resources. I want to review some of this with you. I am not going to go through all of these guys because at the end of the day, Lori does not need to be there. We have seen a lot of crimes that are backed up by people that were never present. People that hire others to kill their spouses or their kids or their significant other. People that just hire hitmen. And the person that hires is as responsible. We have the Smart case where this Smart lady told the students to kill for her. They're all out of jail and she is still in jail. He knows that. He knows that. And it's sad that, well, I shouldn't criticize him because he's doing whatever he can. He doesn't have a lot to work with. Moving along, Archibald goes on to describe the weird religious babble that really does not make sense. I imagine that this is where Lori starts boiling. In America, you can believe how you want, but you can't go killing people. So what are they talking about? What is all this religious talk? Archibald tells the jurors to listen to the call from Melanie Gibb where Lori says the kids are safe and happy. Does she know Shad and Alex were out in the backyard together? Remember all the GPS data? Lori's not there. Lori's not in the backyard when Shad and Alex are. She's not coming and going from Shad's property on those days. She's not there. They are calling and texting her. Are they texting her about 2 days? That they were going to kill some people? We don't know that. Maybe they were texting about running an errand. Do you want a real Coke or a Diet Coke? Really? And what about all the text messages where she was pushing Shad to tell her that her kids were ready to die? Archibald says, look for the lack of evidence of who is doing what. He says, he brings up Shad's blessing to Alex. To me, that blessing is craziness. Opening the portals of time, third creation, fourth creation, great warriors, exaltation. What in the heck is Shad talking about? He's the leader of his new church. He calls himself a patriarch, just goofy stuff. Archibald is trying really to, get with the jury and tell them, I'm one of you. Archibald then references Colby's testimony where he said Lori was a good mom. He mentions the phone call from Colby to Lori and then breaks down in tears. Yes, Archibald breaks down in tears and says, it was so painful. It is so painful. Why? Why are you breaking in tears, Archibald? Manipulation. Archibald is now talking about April Ryan's testimony of Lauren trying to recruit her to join the 144,000. April declined to join. Archibald talks about Lori hiring a babysitter. Hold on. He moves too fast from there. She declined, but before she declined, Lori was telling her that she had a bigger mission now, that she didn't need to take care of her kids. So is there a theme there? Archibald then talks about Lori hiring a babysitter to watch JJ. If Lori has all these plans to kill her kid, why hire a babysitter and bring her over and introduce her? And why shake JJ into school? Because she didn't know. She was waiting for the death percentage to go up. If you're going to kill your kid next week, why do that? Because Lori didn't have a plan. She might have not had an organized plan, but she had a plan nonetheless, as the text messages confirm. Archibald says, on Lori's rental application for her Restbook home, she listed JJ and Tally as her kids. Why tell everyone you had 2 kids? Why enroll them in school? Why hire a babysitter? Well, she also told a lot of people that she didn't have any kids. She also told a lot of people that Charles Vallow had died of a heart attack. We know that Lori has no problem manipulating the facts and manipulating people, so she provided the truth that was convenient to her. Archibald says Lori lied to protect Shad, her lover, her eternal, in how many worlds companion. How can someone have that much control over you? We've heard how reason and common sense go out of the window sometimes when religious principles are involved, and that is only if you let them. They say she's cunningly coming up with a plan to knock off all these people. Why not go get insurance policy on the kids? She didn't go get an insurance policy on the kids. She tried. She went to Gerber's insurance policy. Why she didn't follow through? Maybe she didn't want to spend the money. Archibald refers to Summer Shifley testimony on the phone call. I have supported you your whole life. Shad has lied to you. Shad has deceived you. Archibald quotes this. And then he says, Alex was a 16-year-old stuck in an adult body because of a car accident. Unsure of what that has to do with anything. Archibald talks about the photos that, in quotations, I'm sure are burned into your brain, the autopsy photos. Before transitioning to the hair found on the duct tape wrap around JJ's body, is that a smoking gun? Not at all. Why not? Because the composition fluid was also in that bag. The pajamas were also in that bag. Kids' socks were also in that bag. A kid's blanket was also in that bag. To say Lori is a killer because they found a piece of her hair on duct tape, that's not true. I would hope all of you who are mothers, I hope your hair is somewhere on your kid's pajamas, socks, or blanket. Yeah, but you have to consider that in the overall context, in the totality of the events. That in itself would not have proved anything, but in the totality of the case and the evidence, it proves a lot. Archibald brings up Tammy's death. That death is up in the air. Was she even murdered? So now he knows more than the medical examiner. Was it a natural death? To believe she was murdered, Shad is so smooth that he convinced a county coroner, a deputy coroner, and a police officer that it was all natural causes and convinced his kids. Remember, the kids showed up. Oh my, what happened to mom? Shad convinced all of them. Sorry, kids, mom died in her sleep. Okay, Dad, you're being asked to convict Lori on killing Tammy? No, she is not. She is being charged with conspiracy to commit murder. That's the difference between the other 2 charges. And besides, all of this that he said is impossible that Chad did, that's exactly what the record shows Chad did. Archibald talks about the prophecy Chad told the neighbors that Tammy would die before she was 50, and he told more than the neighbors. Wouldn't Tammy also know about this prophecy? Couldn't that be why she increased her life insurance? Tammy was still with Chad even though he was so naughty. She stood by him, even as he went bankrupt and he was trying to sell his stupid books. So her prophetic husband, who said, dear wife, you're going to die next year, could that have caused her to increase her life insurance? Prove to me that that's false. Actually, as you very well said, Mr. Archibald, you have to prove nothing, and we have to prove nothing to you. Archibald brings up Audrey's testimony and says he thought she was making up stuff. Well, we don't know that, right? What did we learn about Audrey, he says? That she was married to Jesus. That's kind of cool. That I'll follow you to 5 different states, even though I didn't really follow you. That is true, and I told you guys about that. Archibald apologizes to the jury for getting a little excited with Audrey because he didn't believe her. But I have to admit that, guys, that she was not a very believable or credible witness to me. You have to sort that and decide what is credible and not credible with these witnesses, what is real and what is imaginary. I kind of agree with him there. Archibald says Lori kept asking Chad what was happening because Chad's been to heaven and he knows. He brings up the fact that Chad would change percentage ratings for people because he's making it up as he goes. He can't remember if it's 0% when people die or 100% when people die. But he obviated something very important. He obviated the fact that at some point, Lori contradicts the death percentages that Chad is giving and tells him what it should be. Okay, Archibald continues, and we're almost done here, guys. What's going on in Chad's brain? You and I wouldn't believe it, but some people do. Some people follow religious leaders when others don't. Was it proven who killed Tylee? No. But Alex and Chad were in the backyard. Chad had said, Tylee doesn't like me. I'm guessing Chad and Alex. I'm guessing Chad and Alex might have done something to Tylee. Did they prove that Lori conspired? Of the 15,000 texts they have in evidence, show me one from Lori that says, so, when are you killing Tylee? We don't need to. She kept asking, where are their death percentages going to be at a point where we can read of them? That she did say. Was it proven, he says now, who killed JJ? No, but Chad got in scratch fight with JJ the day before. Maybe those were the scratches on JJ's neck. Alex was only at the gravesite for JJ for 17 minutes. That's not enough time to find a board, find rocks. No, Chad helped them. He goes, why can people escape religious leaders? Why can Lori escape and get back to her good mom life? Lori is not a leader in Chad's new church, the Church of the Firstborn. Lori so wants to testify of Jesus. She wants to tell the world how much she loves Jesus. Lori, I will add, is dangerous. She wants to tell you she personally met him on more than one occasion. But is Lori a leader or a follower of Chad? She so wants to be a leader, but she's not leading anyone. She's following Chad. She thinks Chad is following Jesus, but Chad is not. He's unfortunately being led by the storm. You guys remember what the storm was? If you don't, I have, I think, my last video. Grab me by the storm and whatever. And I agree with him that what was motivating Chad was not Jesus, but as he says, the storm. Archibald says, and with this part of the closing arguments, as a pastor, I have to agree. He says, people who follow Jesus do good things. They are respectful, kind, serve others. If someone wants you to walk a mile, walk 2 miles with them. Then Archibald gets shook up again. Apparently he believes in this. Treat people like you want to be treated. Judge people like you want to be judged. Since you're a sinner, be kind and forgiving of sinners. That's the Jesus we know, and I agree with that. That's the Jesus that Lori knew, and then she exchanged him for a different Jesus. That's the Jesus Lori taught her children about. That's the Jesus Lori knew until she met Chad Daybell. The question is, why did she discard that Jesus and made a Jesus in her own image because it was convenient to her desires for sex, money, and power? Why did she do that? That was her choice. Archibald, no one here thinks Lori actually killed anyone. That's why she's being charged with conspiracy. No, she's charged with both conspiracy and first-degree murder. So they want you to be convinced that she is part of this plan, that there's a specific plan to kill. If you find her guilty, will that bring the kids back? Nope. If you find her not guilty, will that bring the kids back? Nope. You can't be concerned about that. You need to be concerned with following the law and the lack of evidence. Or the abundance of evidence, Mr. Archibald? He continues, if there is anything we've learned about a storm, is that you hide from a storm. You seek shelter from a storm. Lori spent her whole life protecting her children. Thank you again. Archibald is done. Very cute. Very cute. But ineffective? All right, let me see here if we have Wood's. Oh, yes, we have his counter argument, guys. Hang with me a little bit longer. This is Wood after the break. He goes, ladies and gentlemen, the state has met its burden beyond a reasonable doubt. Reason and common sense. The evidence in this case is clear. The evidence in this case points to one common thread, and that thread is Lori Vallow. The defense says she's not a killer. She is a killer. Lori is the connection to the deaths. What connection does Chad Daybell have to Charles Vallow? Lori. Why did we talk about Charles Vallow? The motive. The defense says the math doesn't add up. The defense didn't give you all the numbers. He continues, when Lori wants something, she finds a way to make it happen. She learned her lesson with Charles when she didn't get the money, so she waited until after the money hit her bank before she killed Tylee. It's true. You heard evidence multiple times that she called Tylee dark. She learned her lesson, and with JJ, she waited until after the money hit her bank to kill JJ. When the whole world is out looking for your kids, does a good mom dance on the beach in Hawaii? No. Does a good mom bury her children in the ground and go bury a recent widower? No. Lori knew her children were dead because she helped plan it. She knew her children were dead because she encouraged it. Lori was tired of the obstacles. She was tired of JJ. She didn't want to deal with him, so she found someone else who could, and they buried him in the ground. Then a graphic is shown on the screen that says, lies Lori told is what tells what really happened. There are 14 circles with statements in each circle, from Tylee Ryan attending BYU, Idaho, to Charles Vallow dying of a heart attack, to telling Melanie Gibb that JJ was with Kay. Remember, Wood says, remember the last thing Summer testified to you, her own sister? When she was asked if Lori had been honest with her about the kids, her response was that Lori had died. Lori lied to cover her crimes, repeatedly. Does a good mom get off to Hawaii when the rest of the world is looking for her kids? Wood continues, the innocent don't need to lie, the guilty lie. Then there's a slide on the screen that says, show your evidence. Wood tells juror to listen to the jail call from Chad to Lori. He says, you will hear the guilt and the fear in her voice because she and Chad both know what the police are going to find. He tells them to watch the body camera footage when she and Chad are chilling by the pool, and we saw that the other day, right? Wood then pushes back on the defense that Lori's hair could have been on the sock or PJs or in the back. He says the hair was not in those places. It was on duct tape surrounding the plastic bag that covered JJ's face. Lori, he says, knew exactly what was going on. Wood continues, when Chad Daybell is texting her about going into the light, we all know what that means. And what does she say? Does she say, let's not kill the kids? No. She says, that is sweet. Lori's own words hold her words against her. Think about the times she says she has no more patience. Wood shows slides of text between the two about death percentages and romantic text. Wood says, when Chad says the kids are 2 or 3%, Lori is upset they're not 0. She is. The defense says there's no text about killing the kids. But we have Lori in text saying, do you think there's a perfectly orchestrated plan to take the kids? Now photos of Tammy, Tylee, and JJ are on the screen, and Wood says, if she didn't intend for these children to die, what mother doesn't go report that they are missing or dead? It makes no sense to say she's a good mom when she's not reporting the deaths of her children or that her children are missing. She intended the deaths. You have the evidence. You must convict her. He continues. When Lori would tell her friend Sulema that nothing she did in this life counted for her, that she could do whatever she wanted, she made a little motion. Wood stops the podium and raises his hand and says, doesn't count for me. Well, make it count for Lori Vallow that Tylee Ryan will never go to college. Make it count that her remains were buried and put in a bucket. Make it count for Lori Vallow that JJ Vallow, a boy with special needs, had a plastic bag over his head and fought for his life. And make it count for Lori that Tammy DeBell had to die so Lori could get to that money. Ladies and gentlemen, reason and common sense. Reason and common sense, you must convict her. Well, this is the counter argument, and he is done. Now, the judge is pulling out of a hat and brings down the jurors from 18 to 12, and he releases the jury together with instructions, and that is how we get to verdict watch. I cannot wait for the verdict to come in, and I certainly hope, as I'm sure you all are, that justice is finally achieved for Tammy, for JJ, and for Tylee. Justice is knocking. It's time we open the door. I'll see you guys on the other side of the verdict. Take care, my friends. Bye.